Hola amigos, welcome back to the channel. In today's video, I want to talk about this really cool vintage lens, the Asahi or Pentax Super Takumar 50mm f1.4 lens. I want to share a little bit of history, my experiences shooting with it in both film and digital formats, and why I think these lenses are still viable and a great buy today. The Super Takumar 50mm prime lens was first introduced in 1964 under the Asahi brand, which later became known as Pentax. It is an M42 mount lens and was used on SLR film cameras such as my beloved K1000. There are 4 different versions of this lens that were produced between 1964 all the way to 1975. This particular copy happens to be a late version 1 that contains 8 elements, and to most Takumar collectors, the most desirable version of the 4. The version 2 contains 7 lens elements, and rumor has it that the 8 element version became so expensive to produce that the company was actually forced to make this design change in order to keep competing with other lens manufacturers at the time, such as Canon, Nikon, and Zeiss. Now, this version was produced between 1965 to 1971. Version 3 was released in 1971 and labeled as Super Multi-Coated, which kept the same 7 lens elements of version 2 but added a much improved multi-coating which helped minimize flaring when shooting outdoors. Now, fun fact about those lenses is that a lot of them are known to be radioactive due to the use of thorium on the lens elements. Of course, it's very minimal and I highly doubt it will cause any harm, but I always thought it to be a little bit of a quirk thing to point out when talking about these older Takumar lenses. And finally, version 4, which had some cosmetic and build changes like a rubberized focusing ring, and that lens was in production between 1972 all the way up to 1975. Now, all of these lenses feature a solid metal construction, a relatively small size and weight, with a very smooth and calibrated focus ring, Although compared to other Super Takumar lenses that I own, this copy is buttery smooth, while my other lenses have a tiny bit of friction to them. However, they are a different focal length, so that might have something to do with it. The aperture ring is nice and tactile, which really rivals any of my Leica lenses. It's super snappy and clicky, and it just feels great in the hand. One quirk about these lenses though is that the aperture ring works counterclockwise compared to my Leica lenses, so going back to shooting with this lens recently took me a little bit of time to getting used to it due to muscle memory by now, but it's not really a big deal, and it's something that you can get used to really quick. One more thing about the focus ring is that it does not have a focus tab. Again, another feature I have grown used to with my Leica lenses, but in this particular lens, it doesn't really make me miss a tab at all, thanks to that sort of like knurled, indented design, which was very common on a lot of vintage lenses at the time. I know that even Leica used to make some 50mm lenses that way as well, so I just really love the way this focus ring moves. It's super smooth, and yeah, I just love it. So as I mentioned earlier, I first got this lens after purchasing my Pentax K1000 and getting into film photography. This lens has been my primary lens to use when shooting film and remains one of my favorite 50mm lenses of all time. But the reason why I really wanted to make this video in the first place was to share my latest experiences using this lens on a digital camera body. So I recently picked up an L to M42 mono adapter to use with my Leica SL2, and I have been loving the results of this combination. The high megapixel sensor and sharpness of the Leica SL2 coupled with the look of vintage glass really creates some beautiful images when paired up together. There's a slight glow when shooting wide open that really gives images what a lot of people call character to the photos. And while I feel the lens is sharp, it's not super clinical like most modern lenses. In other words, you sort of get the best of both worlds in terms of modern technology a mirrorless camera offers and that classic look of an old lens. Color rendition is also very nice out of camera. Obviously, that also depends on the camera you use, but in my case, the rendering I get from the SL2 looks very true to life. A little muted perhaps, but with enough pop and contrast to keep me happy. I would say it reproduces very natural colors and of course beautiful bokeh when shot wide open. I shoot RAW 99% of the time anyway, so I always grade my photos and I feel like the image holds up very well to that. Now, most of these older lenses can be had for very little money in the used market. I think I paid roughly $250 about 7 years ago, and the prices have been consistently the same since I check prior to making this video. Of course, the prices can vary a little bit depending on the condition, but also the version. As I mentioned earlier, the version 1 8-element will always be a little bit more money, but it won't be significantly more than the other versions that I mentioned as well. Another great thing about these older lenses is that they can be adapted to a bunch of other digital camera systems such as Canon, Fuji, and Sony. And for the little money that you can buy them for, I believe they are definitely a value lens to add to your kit whenever you want to go for that sort of vintage look, or just to try it out and see if they fit your shooting style. So would I recommend this 50mm Super Takumar? Absolutely. Again, despite their affordable price and age, you're getting a very fine product, which at the time it rivaled any other lenses in its class, and it's almost becoming like an heirloom piece at this time. They can be used as an alternative lens in your collection when you want to go for a more artistic look or adding that vintage character, and they won't break the bank. In all honesty, I think this lens gives a hell of a fight against my Leica 50mm Summilux, which is almost 20 times the price of this lens. Alright, this is it for today's video. I really hope you enjoy the images I've shown you using this lens. Let me know in the comments if you would like to see a head-to-head comparison between the Leica and the Super Takumar. I have not tested them side by side, but I would definitely be interested to see the results of that. So maybe that's an idea for a future video. Thanks again for the support. Be sure to like and subscribe for more music and photography content, and I will see you in the next one. Cheers.